Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif, an urban planner, and you're more than welcome to join my big journey of exploring the making of smarter and more livable cities. Please don't forget to follow Urbanistica on the different social media platforms, and also let's connect on LinkedIn. Big thanks to Urbanistica podcast partner AFRY. AFRY is an international engineering and design company providing sustainable solutions in the fields of energy, industry, and infrastructure. Are you ready for a new episode? Let's go for it. I have the pleasure to welcome you, Martin Andersen, to Urbanistica podcast. Hey, and welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.
My pleasure. How are you doing?
You're right. I'm doing pretty fine. There's a lot of things happening at the moment in terms of circular economy in landscape architecture, which is very exciting. So I'm doing pretty well.
That's amazing. Are you back to the office, or where are you sitting now?
We are back in office. We are currently sitting most of the time in blocks in blocks in Copenhagen. In this community where lots of different companies with different agendas are sitting. But what ties all of us together is that we work for a more sustainable future.
That's amazing. So, Martin, tell us about yourself. How would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us about your passion.
Well, I'm born and raised in the city of Copenhagen in Denmark. I have a background in landscape architecture. Have been studying at the University of Copenhagen. I have been abroad in the States, and have always somehow worked within sustainability in most of my doings, and both professionally mostly, but also privately. Yeah, and I think that's that tells a lot about me.
Yeah. What made you study landscape architecture?
Well, I like the idea of actually making actually having a profession where you could make something and make something for others and make something for society, and of course you can do that in different ways throughout different types of professions. But I really also like that what we designed can come to life, and you can you can see and feel it, and you can also see. Sorry. And you can also see how people react to it and how people become happy about the interventions and the changes in the landscape that we are doing as landscape architects.
Yeah, that's true. So what is your passion?
My passion, so my passion is to make landscape architecture more sustainable. Throughout school, I was struggling with this agenda, because as I understood it, or as I interpreted it, we as landscape architects thought we were sustainable enough because our profession is working with nature, planting trees, making bike lanes and whatnot. And I was like, but isn't there more to this? Can't we really? Isn't there any possibilities to push this agenda even more? And then at the end of my studies, I discovered the term circular economy, and all of a sudden things kind of fell into pieces, because working with sustainability becomes this broad idea of making things just a little bit better, but you don't have any tools, right? You need to invent your tools yourself, and you can describe, and you can make goals, and you can do all these kind of things, but you're not really presented with a set of tools. And for me, circular economy was that toolbox that I needed, and it made so much sense. It made so much sense in terms of working with landscape architecture and working with recycled materials and with other with a longer time frame, and with maintenance in another way, and all these kind of things, because circular economy, or cradle to cradle, as some of it was called in the beginning, started with tree, and we are working with trees, right?
But like, was it a course within your education program?
No, it was actually mainly a focus that arose a few years back from the building industry and from the building architecture, with especially Lene we have here in Copenhagen, who had some pilot projects and later also some quite nice and quite large housing projects that showed that for me was the inspiration, and I looked at that and said, okay, if they can do it in such a complex design as it is to design a building with recycled materials, well, then not saying that landscape architecture is not as least complex, but still, it was pretty clear to me that of course we could do the same things in landscape architecture. I mean, everything is basically resources, and if they can be used and prolonged more than once, well, that should be pretty easy. Yeah.
Exactly. So take us from academia to the business. Take us to your career. What did you work with, and what are you working with now?
Well, everything started actually quite fun for me. Most entrepreneurs started their desk. I started at a recycle station in Copenhagen. So the first thing I did straight out of university was to be allowed to be a part of a project by the municipality of Copenhagen that allowed a bunch of groups and organizations and whatnot with different agendas to come to a recycle station and work there from there, and also take materials out of the different containers. So what we did out there for those 3 years we were affiliated with that project was to test and try a lot of things and learn about materials, learn about the fractions, learn about which state of how demolished these different things was, what could come out, what in what quantities, and all these kind of things was a very, very large inspiration for me and for us as an organization working with landscape architecture out there. And it really showed us the potential, but also showed the problems with scale, from one little recycle station with a small amount of area and people coming and placing things. We could maybe do a little temporary installation and stuff like that. But when we worked with these materials, we could see that they worked, that there was no difference, that some of our projects even got better because we didn't use new materials and things had a little patina and stuff like that. So that was kind of the place where I very, very fast found my proof of concept.
Yeah, but tell me,
yeah.
the recycling station, was it like a construction waste or no, like everything?
It was everything. It was everything. It was basically everything that you can't throw out in your own home. So we didn't have any food waste, for example, but we had like concrete waste, we had wood waste, we had old tires, we had basically everything besides of trash.
Yeah. So after three years, you had your proof of concept, and you'd be like, okay, now I can do landscape architecture.
I would say maybe more after one year, but we continued out there, and then we and the good thing was that this place also functioned a little bit as a accelerator, or what you would call it, within the municipality of Copenhagen, and through that we got some very nice contacts in the municipality, and then started very quickly, I think, actually to do smaller projects for the municipality of Copenhagen, where we both did some citizen involvement, but also worked and built installations in landscape architecture with recycled materials. Yeah, and then it was plain hard work, starting up a company, finding a name, finding business partners, finding customers, changing things around, losing a business partner. And finally get the project that had the scale, which we did last year, where we completed a full scale 7,000 square meter landscape projects with these ideas in mind from the very beginning.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a great journey. So what are you working now, like as a position and task?
In the company, I'm the founder, and I'm the project leader of the projects we have. Project leader and project manager, and also doing a lot of work on new sales, of course, and we, maybe important, we also try to communicate what we're doing, because we not see this as a we see this movement from a linear to a circular economy within landscape architecture as not something we can do ourselves. So it's very important for us to collaborate and to communicate our ideas, our methods, our progress, so other people can help do this transition. I don't really believe that. I do really believe that if most of us as landscape architects starts to demand more recycled materials, start to tell our clients that this is necessary, the easier it gets for me basically to do what I would like to do. And I think it's important that, and I'm not sure if I agree that we should compete on sustainability. I think we should compete on more traditional skills, and then sustainability can be something that we should collaborate on different scales.
Yeah. And Martin, tell me, what is like a circular landscape architecture? Because for me, like what I know, I know how, like when it comes to architecture, the material and so on, but how do we do that, or what is it when it comes to landscape architecture?
That is a good question, and there's several answers to that question. Of course, I think one thing that is very important to understand is to stop seeing a piece of landscape architecture as a piece that you, as an architect or an artist, design and then place and then leave. If we start seeing it as more as a living organism, basically, as it is, because the trees we plant are small and then they get bigger and all that. If we start to see the project that we are designing, that we are preparing and making as something that has a lifespan of 30 years, 50 years, and even more, then we have a very good starting point, because a circular piece of landscape architecture is not something that you can just build and then leave. You need to maintain it. You need to develop it throughout the years. You need to go back and see what was successful and what wasn't. So that idea of that we can place something, of course we can do that, but what if we need to change it? What if something happens and needs to be made different? Well, then we need to be able to come back and work with it. And then what happens when it's not a piece of landscape architecture anymore, when it has to be something else for some reasons? Well, then the material should be in a state or a condition that can be reused again. So I think it's the first thing is to acknowledge is that it is a living thing that we are designing, and we need to think about it. We need to build in that flexibility in these kind of projects. The next thing is more practical. In terms of circular economy theory, we have two circles. We have the technical and we have the biological, which aligns very nicely with the main components in landscape architecture. And for us, the technical would be all the inventory, it would be all the pavement, it would be all basically the hard materials. And what we usually do is before we even start drawing, we survey what kind of hard materials can we get. Is there anything on site? Is there anything that the municipality or the client can supply for us? When we have surveyed that, then we look into the closer proximity of the site and see what can we get very close by, and then what can we get a little further away. And when we have looked on all that, we kind of have a material bank that we then design from. We also look into what kinds of qualities is there in this place. And of course, if it's a completely new development site with nothing, well, then it's more difficult. But if it is a transformation of a piece of landscape, okay, then we look very much into what can we reuse and what changes should we do instead of changing everything around. What can we then build on top of this? And then
So you check the resources first, then you design, not the opposite. Like you design and then you ask for resources.
You can definitely do it the other way around, but you then need to be aware that it's not necessarily possible that you can get those materials. I mean, there is in Denmark right now a lot, or not a lot, but more and more that works with distribution of recycled materials, and that means that if you work very much within the standards and the materials that are used a lot, then you have then it's more likely that you can actually get it. But it's better, and for me, from my point of view, if you have a good understanding of, or if you somehow can secure the materials very early in a project, so you know what you can work with.
Yeah. But this maybe limit the creativity and the design, or what do you think?
I actually see it the other way around. I think it's it makes it means that I need to be more creative because I don't have all the choices. So if I have all the choices, then I would just do as I usually do, or as all of my colleagues have done in a couple of years. So I actually see it as a booster for creativity that I don't have all the choices. And if I want to make something nice, for example, out of very large pavements, if I want to make that dynamic, then I need to find some other design tools in my toolbox, rather than just saying, okay, that dynamics can I only get with smaller concrete tiles, and therefore I will throw out these free large concrete tiles. Yeah.
Now maybe a landscape architect asks, why do we need to do this way? Can't we just continue? Because now you're adding one more step, one more phase to the design process. We need to check resources and we need to do extra job. This might cost the project more and we need more budget. Like why do we need to do this?
Maybe we should have started there, because there is a burning platform, and that the climate crisis and the resource crisis is, of course, that burning platform. We know in Denmark, for example, that gravel is that we don't have that much gravel left. So in a few years, we need to import gravel from other places. In Zealand, we are running out of gravel, and of course we can find gravel and all these kind of things. But on the other hand, it also tells us that we have an issue here. We don't have an infinitive amount of resources, as you may believe and may think. There is only one planet, and there is planetary boundaries on that. So one simple reason is that we to do all this is that we don't have a choice. We basically don't have a choice. Materials is becoming more expensive in the future, and you can't be sure that you can get all the materials that you were used to. And the other reason, which is also quite important here, is that right now it is cost neutral to pollute. You don't pay for pollution, and that means that there is some unfair advantages for some material producers compared to other material producers, and we can't. I mean, we are in a capitalistic economy. It's going to be very, very difficult to challenge that. So there is, in my opinion, and also in others' opinion, there is a market fault here, where we get unfair advantages to people who decide to create things that pollutes a lot. And I don't think that is something that, and I'm pretty sure that that's something that won't continue. In a few years, it will cost something to pollute. Hopefully, we agree to some general standards, and we also see it on different other branches. But in the future, it's definitely going to be an extra what's it called? We need to put more money in pollution, basically, and therefore those kind of materials that are easy and cheap to use today maybe not be as cheap and easy to use in the future.
Exactly. So do you consider yourself, because now you're talking about the climate and so on, do you consider yourself a climate activist?
Yeah, you saw this question when I run through, and I think it's difficult because I mean, who is not a climate activist in these days? You kind of need to be a climate activist. I mean, I can't see why you shouldn't. Of course, if you don't believe in climate change, but who doesn't believe in climate change?
Exactly.
You can see it. I mean, I experienced myself. I mean, the first time I experienced was at my dormitory, where we had 2 meters of water in our basement, and and that was quite of a hassle. So in my opinion, everybody should be a climate activist. But I mean, if you ask me personally, no, I'm not participating in large rallies and stuff like that. I see my climate activism as I express my climate activism through my job and through my doings. Yeah.
Yeah. So you do it within your profession.
Yeah. And then I've of course limited my amounts of travels by plane, and I don't eat meat, and or at least I don't eat meat that often, and I do all these other things that you as a citizen, in my opinion, should do. But my main focus is trying to change the way we are doing landscape architecture and move that in a more climate friendly direction.
But Martin, is like the circular landscape architecture something new that we're talking about it now, recent years, or no? This is something like have been in many years.
See, again, that is super interesting, because in many ways, circular architecture, both landscape and buildings, has occurred back in history. You can see it in ways that buildings has been built. I mean, in bricks, for example, a good example. You can put them up. It's smaller amounts. You can easily repair them. It has longevity, and you can also break them down and reuse them if you have put them up in the right way. The same way you can do with natural stones and granite in pavements in landscape architecture. And if you look at a historical street here in Copenhagen, for example, it is circular because it has a very long lifespan. It's very robust materials. It's smaller entities that easily can be taken apart. You don't need any glue, for example, and so on. So we have actually in our tradition the experience with working with circular landscape architecture. The big issue right now is that when we do it, we always do it with new materials. But if we start doing what we are good at with reused materials, then it would actually be very easy to change this around. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about like the principles of circularity in some of your landscape architecture projects. I would love to know more.
Of course,
like,
of course.
Share with us.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, the best example is that 7,000 square meter natural park we did for Havn, a large developer here in Copenhagen, and we did it out in Ørsted. And in this project, we had 3 construction sites, and maybe sometime in the future there will be placed buildings on top of this. But right now they're just left behind, so to say, and there's no plans of building on these. So we basically had just 3 flat construction site, as you could recall it. But what we saw when we came out there was a huge amount of resources, because what we did and what we had our contractors to do was to dig up the soil and then sculpting a landscape with the soil that we had already. So one principle we started we had from the very beginning was to avoid driving new materials, new gravel, into the site. So we very carefully sculpted the landscape with the soil that we had out there. So the larger fragments became dikes, and the smaller fragments became was placed where we wanted the vegetation. Then we also had requests on having urban farming out there, and therefore we had a soil that was good for that coming in. But besides that, we didn't add any soil to that site, and therefore limited the amount of cost for resources, but also the CO2 emissions of driving things around and all that. So that was the starting point. Then we had kind of a base landscape. On top of that, we added some inventory, and all the inventory, the pavement and the benches was something that we found out of our clients' own storages. So we simply was going around in different storages and looking at materials and be like, okay, we would need this much of this one, and we would need that one of that one, and all that. And something was, for example, very large papers that we put down in a nice fashion, we think at least, and other things was these huge granite stones that once had been a part of the Copenhagen harbor, but adding a very simple bench structure on top of that, we very cheaply but very nicely created these benches that we then could place around there. Then when we had all the inventory locked down, we made some paths around, and then we start the planting. But instead of again using a lot of money to drive trees from Holland and Germany, which is normally what you would do, we decided, of course, with the acceptance of our clients, to go as small as possible. So we simply made all the vegetation out there from seeds and from small branches that we basically just placed in directly into the gravel. And that was a little bit of a hassle because we had some difficulties with wind and birds eating our seeds. So we needed to reseed a couple of times. But now we can see, we already can see the result of that hard work, and that these seeds actually is, that these different plants and herbs are now coming up and greening this place. It took some time. It was an experiment, but that in the end it will work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Also, I'm wondering if we can put a link in the description for this project. You have it on the homepage, send it later to me.
Yeah.
So, because you painted a very beautiful picture now, and I think this is like really great. How to say it's also the process, not only the result of the project.
Yeah.
So, like, tell me what are the challenges you faced during the process?
I mean, we were lucky to have a client that really wanted this and really wanted to set the standard high on the recycling in this project. So we were lucky that everybody in this organization like to help us receive these goals. So that was nice. But you can't rely on that. I mean, you can't rely on having a client that has a huge amount of natural stones and pavements and whatnot that they don't need. So that is a challenge. Where do you get the materials? Where do you get recycled materials? And then we also faced some challenges with legislation. That we actually had a recycled product that we would like to test for our gravel paths. A product that we had developed simultaneously that consists of crushed bricks, which in our small scale test worked pretty fine, looked very nice. But interestingly enough, when we wanted to put this in, we need to apply for permission from the municipality, and the municipality needed us to assure that with this product, with this resale product, that it was clean and not non-toxic. And we could of course do that. But then the time frame was not. I mean, we could have done that if we had a little longer time, but time became our worst enemy here, and because of time, we couldn't get that permission. But the interesting thing was that with that material that had been through a dealer that have been first a demolisher that have been cleaning it up, and then a dealer that have been saying this is okay and doing a process to it, even though we needed to tell in beforehand that this was clean, and with a new material that basically is the same thing. It's of course it was two different materials, but basically something that comes out of a storage facility and stuff like that. With the new material, we only had to tell that it was clean afterhand, and that I'm not challenging that. It's just very important to know, because if I knew this. If I knew this, or if I was to do this project today, then the first thing when I started to designing in this recycled material was to try to get that permission. Yeah, and I do completely understand that we can't have toxic material lying around just because we need to test and try to do something better. Of course, I understand that, but it's something that nobody could have told me. Until I had to face that challenge. So that was definitely one for the experience bank.
Yeah, and I would love to know like the how to say the process of designing and finding resources. How do you do that? Like, if you explain to us, like do you start to sketch, or no? You check first what was their sketch, then back checking resources. How do you do that?
Yeah, as I said, the first thing we do is establishing this material bank, and I mean, and we find different products, we find different materials that we know, and that we think can work in this project, that we know we can get our hands on. And then with those materials, we of course, if we don't have the meshes, we find the meshes and all this, and then we start basically sketching, but with these fixed meshes. So what we did was sketching up and trying to work around. Then of course we had a design brief saying that we should do this on this side, and we wanted to have a bike track or pump track on this side, and we wanted to have urban gardens on that. And then of course we built this in very carefully. In that process, actually, we also did some citizen involvement where we talked with the people, what they wanted, what they needed. We did some designs, showed it to them, got some redesigns, and that how validated our designs with the people using it later on, which is also in some way a resource saving action, because if you do it right the first time, then you don't need to change it, right? Yeah. And then when we had the first sketches, when we were doing the first sketches, we also start searching for the contractor. So we very early in this phase could have a dialogue with the contractor. So when we did the tender, we didn't know what we were to we didn't know what we hadn't actually done any drawings. We didn't know what we wanted to do, because we wanted to be aligned with the contractor from the very beginning. And of course, we are the landscape architects. Of course, we had last call on the design and all these kind of things, but we had lots of good talks with the contractor on how to do these different things. And they also had ideas, and they brought ideas to the table as well. And some of them of course we used because it was good ideas, but lots of the time we also talked about how can we accomplish this goal, and what kind of design will accomplish this goal, and what kind of design make it easy for you to build, instead of so we could spread the resources as much as possible, and therefore get as much done as possible. Yeah, and then we did some simple drawings, and then we had a lot of meetings. So I spent a lot of time on construction site talking with the different landscapers, and basically having them redesign or rebuild some of the smaller hills, and some of that is because that was not what was intended. Yeah.
This is so typical, no?
Yeah. Very, very.
But then you
It was fun.
saved a lot. Yeah, you saved a lot of money in this project by using by reusing material. Or
Well, that's.
I mean, what if you compare it that if you used like a new material? Let's talk about the cost.
Yeah, but the problem is that a new material, you know what it is, you know where you get it, you know where it's at, and and it's also put into a logistics system that it's easy to get out. It's often placed very nicely on pallets. It's easy to take out and bring and use, and all these kind of things. And you're not.
There is a system for it.
But there's a system for it. You don't necessarily have the same system for recycled materials. Sometimes they just come out. I can send you a bunch of pictures where I just stand in huge piles of very, very, very high quality materials, but we don't know how large they are. We don't know how much they weigh. We don't know anything about them except what we can see with our eyes. And all this handling of these recycled materials is not cost free. And of course, you can be lucky that a demolisher is driving past your construction site and can drop off some things, but you can't be sure about that. So to me, saying that it becomes cheaper using recycled materials, I'm not seeing it. And maybe in the future it can be. Maybe especially if we get some taxonomy on new materials that changes the prices. Maybe then it can become cheaper. But right now it's.
So it's because of the lack of the infrastructure or the system
that's one of course several reasons. Yeah. Then there's another reason that I think it's important here. That is that if we right now rely on cheap recycled materials because we can get them for free because nobody else wants them, what happens in 2 years? What happens in 5 years when more people want this? Well, then the prices rises, and then we don't have an argument that it's cheaper to use recycled materials. I think we need to find the answers in other types of value definitions. For example, ESGs in terms of stock trading, in these different more or less volunteeringly sustainability certificates you can get, and all these kind of things. I think we need to find the value there, and then of course we shouldn't. In my opinion, we should also be able to, as circular landscape architects, to do this at the same cost as using regular materials, of course, and that's both in money and in CO2. We really need to be sure that what we are doing with recycled materials is not polluting more than doing business as usual. Well, but if we can do that, and if we can broaden the value proposition of these actions, then we might be able to rebuild or to find a good value, and maybe also think that this is cheaper. But money dime for dime, it's not.
Yeah. If we talk about the quality of the material, are the new one better than the recycled one?
Not necessarily. I mean, one thing that I experience is that, and that maybe just being this interesting time before recycled materials is fully commercialized. But one thing I experience right now is that I can get I can get better quality, a higher quality on the different entities. So instead of needing to use concrete tiles, then I can get natural then I can get granite. So item for item, I think actually we can do better using recycled materials, but material for material, then of course there is some materials that age very well, and there's some materials that can't be reused at all. The nice thing about working in landscape architecture with this is that we have a tradition of working with very robust materials, and we have a tradition of working with things that can last longer in the project that they're in. So we have, especially in landscape architecture, we have some very nice possibilities in the material bank or in the bank of material that is already in use. But of course, every material needs to be assessed. Every material needs to be checked when we're using it. And there is places where it doesn't make sense. There is also materials where we have found a new or better technique. So it's better to use the new materials than the old ones. But I mean, it's not in that many cases in landscape architecture. I mean, it could be lighting, for example. Of course, LED is better than the old lights, but then there's a possibility to rebuild these old lamp posts to LED, and then maybe there's a good case there. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you talked about like landscape architecture. I know many landscape architecture architects listening to the podcast, and maybe they didn't have the chance as you like in your journey to read the course and work with it. But if they want to start implementing circular landscape architecture, can you give us some advice, like where to start?
Call me. More than welcome. I think it's important to. I mean, it's the one thing that's of course important is to talk with your client. I mean, talk with the client, make sure that understand the client's needs or wants in this area, and then also try to assess if the client has any materials, especially if you're working with municipalities. They often have to start some random place where there is some random things, or they know that another project next in another part of the city is going to start, and therefore there can be thereby there can be some materials. So that whole assessment of and mapping of possibilities is super important. But of course, having the client on board, having your collaborators on board on this is key, because at the end of the day, it is even though you can sit and think it, it's still people that need to conduct all this work. So that would be the very beginning. And the next thing is to maybe even before you have the project and the clock is running, start to explore the different companies that are distributing recycled materials, and then of course have a look at the projects that has been done. In my besides being the founder of ORCA, I also work with the Association of Danish Landscape Architects, and we have for the last couple of years we have collected Danish examples of projects with a larger degree of circular economy, and we know they are there. There are 10 very nice examples, at least in Denmark, where you can find inspiration. Yeah. So there are projects out there to become inspired of and to see what other people have done. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the advice. I think there are more when they listen to the episode.
Yeah.
And I would love to ask, what is the next step for you? Like,
When the next step for me is I think it's quite simple. I think we need more projects, examples. I mean, I could probably have a very nice professional career just sitting and do theory. it's not that for me. It's not that interesting. I think it's more interesting when you actually see your ideas become alive and be used out there. So for me, the next step is definitely to find more people to collaborate with, to do even more projects, and to push this agenda even further. In the first, what do you want to say? In the first, in these 5 years, I have have had very much focus on the materials and where to find them, how to use them. Also have had that focus on how to implement them in projects throughout several projects, and besides pushing those methods even more, then I'm also looking into to the whole life cycle of a project, and also looking into to the whole maintenance, in order to be able to learn and understand how can we design from the very beginning in a manner that we're not just limiting or reducing the amount of resources used in the construction phase, but how can we also design landscape architecture that reduces the resources used in the in-use phase. So that's going to be a focus for me in the near future.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow the journey, because like now you open a new door for me and for the listeners about the circular landscape architecture. I wish you all the good luck, and I will follow you on LinkedIn and see the latest news. So now we are moving to the next section, and this episode is about smart city.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to ask you, how do you define a smart city, like from your perspective?
I mean, I really like, and I have a soft spot for these new interventions and technologies that are in place. And I really think that there is happening a lot of fun things, and also very inspired of what happens in other branches and other businesses, and how we can gain from that in landscape architecture. But what's important for me in terms of smart city is that it's not just smart for to be smart. I mean, it has to have a concrete function in the everyday life of the inhabitants of the city. It has to come out of the computer somehow and be a part of the city. There need to be some physical manifests of these different apps. So to have a concrete value. So I find it very interesting in what you can doing, and we as a company is also looking into using different new ways of assessing materials in our cities. We are a part of a ECA funded project that looks into to how satellite footage can be used to assess the amount of resources in a city, and that is super interesting, because it's somehow in the journey from from satellite can become something tangible, because we, with better knowledge of resources in a city, then we maybe be able to be better to plan how we can use these resources, and how we can make more circular landscapes with recycled materials. But it needs to be that kind of journey, and in my opinion, then it becomes most interesting. How is the journey from the device or from the app to the tangible manifestation? Yeah.
And how do we make landscape architecture smarter?
It's interesting. I mean, there's definitely a lot of possibilities within both within construction. I mean, I see great examples of the uses of drones and different imagery to make it easier and make it faster to sculpt and create the landscapes that we need. And I think that I think that can bring more quality, and also possibly less your resources spent because you don't need, if you can be more precise in the very beginning, you don't need to change everything later on. So there's definitely some opportunities in construction. There's definitely also some opportunities in maintenance. If we can survey, if we can monitor our landscapes, our projects, and all that, then we also might have a better chance to know when to water correctly, when to prune correctly, and all these things. So I also found that very interesting. And then I think there is a lot of possibilities within, of course, assessment of resources and getting a better knowledge of which kind of building blocks our cities are built of. I think and I think for me that's some of the most interesting interventions that are, and that I know that are to be developed at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about like because when I hear the story about your project, imagine there's like a platform that gather all the information and data about the recycled materials, so it's easy for you to find them and so on. Is there something like this now in Denmark?
There is
A platform.
several initiatives that I think in a couple of years will become that platform. I don't know. I can't tell you which one I believe in the most because I really don't know. But there is a lot of initiatives to try to find better ways of distributing those resources. But and that's great. I mean, and that is actually quite simple. It's web-based platforms, marketplaces as we know them. But of course, it become very important. But they could get a little bit smarter if we could get more data on the climate impact of these different materials, and if we could have sustainability systems that could, in our design process, help us telling us while we are designing how much impact do we have, so we could do changes in the very early in a very early phase. Well, if we could do that, then we also could be more secured in our way of designing that we are actually doing something better. I mean, the whole idea of validating design, I think it's something that is in our design tradition, that we design different versions of it, then we validate it on aesthetics and validate it on functions and all that, and I think we need to also to be able to in real time validate it on climate impact, and that if CAD could do that, for example, or Revit or whatever, well, that would be a very strong tool for us.
Yeah, I think it's coming because like now I work at AFRY, and in the south in Malmö city, this section of landscape architecture, they are developing a kind of tool that's calculating like the CO2 of like square meters of different materials. So like you can easily, how to say, as you mentioned, control and see like the consequences, and then you decide and change material.
Yeah.
So I think, and I hope it's coming like soon, so we can add it to the different software. So it's easy to talk about this, these numbers as well, not only about the cost.
No. I mean, but also even within the cost, I mean, it's it would be becoming very interesting to do, you know. I mean, usually we have time to do more than just one proposal, and if we could very early stage have an idea of the impact on these two ones, then we could, as you say, use that in the decision making of whether to go A or B, along with the other criteria that we are validating our projects on.
Yeah. Well, interesting talk about smart city, and yeah, I got inspired. There are some interesting points you mentioned that I will take with me, and also now we are moving to the last section of the episode. It's gonna be more about like personal reflections. I hope you're ready.
Yeah.
So, Martin, what makes you sad in your city? Like from urban planning, landscape architecture point
Mm.
of view.
Well, I mean, I live in Copenhagen. We're pretty proud of our urban planning here. We're pretty proud of how we are doing things. Of course, it's different when you. I mean, there's a lot of eyes on our city, and lots of people talking about the great livability and all that. And for some of the things, it's maybe a little harder to see when you're living in it. But in general, I mean, there is happening a lot of good things here. What I don't like is in the urban planning area where we have been seeing throughout maybe the last 30 years an idea of tying large urban development projects together with other infrastructural investments. And of course, understand the logic behind it, that if you can sell land, then you can use that revenue to build a subway, for example. I understand that. But the problem is that in all these different development sites, we have seen that where this this revenue of selling urban sites, you can also see examples of uh, where these two things have inflicted one another. So I'm a little sad that we haven't found a model where we can build necessary and crucial infrastructure for our cities without tying it down to how the city has to develop, because it pushes the development of the city in a non-healthy way, in my opinion.
I understand. And what makes you proud and happy?
But I mean, again, coming from Copenhagen and looking at the landscape architecture we have here, we have a very strong tradition, and we have had some very renowned and also internationally renowned landscape architects coming and doing work. I think that it's, of course, it's also always a pleasure coming new places in the city, seeing things and be like, oh, this is something special. That of course is a huge enjoyment for me. But I mean, it's not something that you can take for granted, so to say. I mean, it also makes me proud that we are a country that helps moving the boundaries of landscape architecture, and we have a city, not just the city of Copenhagen, but also a city of Copenhagen who wants to move the boundaries of how we are doing landscape architecture. I think that's interesting. I mean, when yeah, maybe a few times a year, I'm doing lectures for high schoolers and others, non-architects, and to tell about landscape architecture in general. And what I always like to do is taking the top 10 spots from Visit Copenhagen,
Yeah.
which I think last time I checked, 7 out of 10 is landscape architecture in some way, or urban, or yeah, or what you call them. It's plazas or other
Public spaces.
public spaces, exactly. And I think that tells a lot about the city of Copenhagen. Even when you fly into Copenhagen, you are where you pick up your luggage, you are greeted by Copenhagen benches. So I think that's very nice that we have this that we have this focus in the city, and also that people really are using these places and areas. Yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. What I love with the Copenhagen, or actually, to be honest, like it was Jan Gale who made me study to urban planning and focus on the social aspects. So greetings to Copenhagen and the people there.
Yeah.
Martin, what should landscape architects stop doing in our cities?
I love this one. I love this question. I really don't like and are yet to understand cast in concrete or cast in place concrete. So all these skateboard-like landscapes where the concrete is casted in a certain form is to me a little bit weird in some way, and of course it's fun, and of course it can do something good in some places, but to me it seems like a technology and a way of creating more dynamic landscapes and whatnot that that is quite new, and I'm not sure if we really need it. And the reason I'm mad about it is because it becomes a one-use only product. So when we are casting in place, using this cast in place concrete, it can only become what it is. We can't break it down. We can't reuse it in any ways. But if we follow our tradition and using smaller pavement tiles and whatnot, then we can change it and reuse it and all these kind of things. So I'm not saying that we should stop from one day to another using cast in place concrete, because I know it has some benefits, especially in climate change projects. But I'm just saying that maybe we should look into why we are doing this, and maybe look into, is there any better ways of doing this, or is there more nature-based ways of creating these type of landscapes?
Yeah. Interesting answers. Let's see what you will answer on this question. If you're allowed to create one rule or add one thing to our cities from urban planning, landscape architecture point of view, what will you add?
I mean, I mean, it's going to be a little boring, but we need a higher cost of polluting. I mean, I've actually been writing notes for all these questions. I thought it was fun, and then I came to that one. I'd be like, okay, I want something a little bit more controversial or a little bit edgy answer. But at the end of the day, after I've been thinking a lot about it, I was like, well, we just need it. I mean, we need pollution to cost money. We can't live in we can't live in 2022 with this knowledge about temperature rising and all that, with this knowledge that it is man-made, it is from pollution, and then still it's free to pollute. I mean, it's horrible.
I understand.
And it
I
would
understand. Do you think it's coming to happen?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think
Yeah.
I don't know if it happens. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be a directly tax or it's going to be more indirectly. But I think it's going to happen, especially in resource heavy industries, because of that simple reason that we don't have all the resources in the world, and something will be and there will be something that there will be shortcomings of certain resources which may make the price rise. So I'm pretty sure it will come, or not. I'm certain that it will come indirectly, but the question is if it also comes more directly in terms of taxes from the EU or from the nations and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, look, I've been following on the sideline the different COPs. You can see a movement. Maybe it's not fast enough, but you can actually see a movement, and you can see more agreement on doing different things. We were so close to get fossils, to get an global understanding that we need to end the use and exploration of fossil fuels this time. Maybe next time we actually have that. So also being quite a optimist about these things. Yeah, I think these things will come.
Yeah. Martin, what is your favorite public space? Where is it? You should have one. You work with spaces and landscape architecture.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite public spaces might actually be the lakes in the city of Copenhagen. It's quite, to me, it's quite unique and quite special to have the possibilities of both have access to water in a quite dense city, but also to have that possibility of having that having a horizon line within the middle of the city, and be able to have those long looks from one part of the city to another. And then there is a bustling life there that I can't really compare to anything else. So yeah, the answer to that question would be the lakes in basically in the middle of Copenhagen.
Nice. And do you have time for hobbies? I see you're busy with on the construction side, talking with different dealers to get resources. What do you do?
And we basically only talked about one of my jobs, and I have two more. One being the chairman of or the president of the Danish of the Association of Danish Landscape Architects.
Wow.
Which could be considered as a hobby. But for sure I have hobbies. Most of them are related to culture. I really have a lifelong passion for rock music and for concerts. Now being a little older, jazz music is also becoming a thing, and I spend a lot of my 3 weeks on different music festivals in Copenhagen, when there's not COVID, of course, or not in Copenhagen, Denmark in total. And then I travel, as many others. But of course, I try to find better ways of traveling. So last year, me and my girlfriend bought a car that we can sleep in. So we are taking that out and about. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford a electrical version, but the next one we will have will be
coming. Yeah,
for sure.
So where is your favorite city, or which city is your favorite one so far?
Can I choose Copenhagen?
No.
Well, if it can't be Copenhagen, which I've always lived here, and all my friends and family are here, and for the other various reasons. Well, I really always enjoyed and have come back to New York a couple of times, and I think that complexity, and I think that that diversity, and I think that atmosphere that there is in New York is it's quite appealing. And I also actually think that I can find neighborhoods in New York that are quite similar to Copenhagen, where there is a nice human scale, but then add on that massive possibilities within culture and music, theater, and all that. Then I really and also the kind of closeness to nature with the water, with the harbor all the way around, and Central Park. Yeah, I think New York is it might be
your favorite.
My favorite city.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. So now I have like three more last questions.
Mm-hmm.
The last three questions to say.
Yeah.
So the first one is, if you are not Martin, the person, the human, and you can be anything else you want, what will you be and why? You can choose anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess it's fun. I mean, usually what would that be? I mean, usually I would ask something like a dog or something like that. If I was to be something else in my next life, being a big dog in a nice family that could get a lot of kids, stuff like that, just lying around and sleep all day and all that. But on the other hand, I really also could see the idea of becoming some kind of a bird and really see things from above, and also have that possibilities of longer travels and stuff like that. So maybe the answer is somewhere between those two.
So you want to be like a flying landscape architect bird?
Yeah.
Flying up and watching the
And then have a nice family that can pet my stomach. I don't know. This is becoming a little weird, but yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
So yeah, and what are your 3 takeaway messages to all our listeners?
Well, of course, climate change is here, and everybody needs to participate in finding the solutions that can ensure that there is a planet for the next generations. landscape architect. That could be the first. The second could be landscape architect. It really holds the possibilities to lead the way. We have some unique possibilities within this that can lead and inspire the way for not just our business, but for many things, both within the building industry, but also beyond. I think we really have the possibilities even as a smaller business group. We really have the possibilities to extend the boundaries of what we can and how we can enforce climate-friendly initiatives. And the last one, I might be a little corny, but I think sharing here is important. I think it's very important to if we are to face these challenges, that we do it together, and that we look into building up strong relationships, and sharing our progress and sharing our ideas and solutions. I think that's reaching out to each other and helping each other around. Dealing with this can of course be a business strategy, but at the end of the day, what we're doing with finding solutions against climate change is what are to help each other. So that might be the last takeaway message. Share.
Thank you so much, Martin. And now it's your turn to ask the last question in this episode. Please feel free to ask me, the listeners, a question.
I should have thought a little bit more on that one. One thing that puzzles me is that, of course, as humans, we like to. Of course, as humans, we are very innovative, and we like to extend the boundaries and stuff like that. But at the same time, we also like to be safe and secure in our actions. And one question I think could be interesting here, because of course we could talk about circular landscape architecture, and we can talk about all these different specific things. But what we really need right now is to find new inventions and develop new ideas. So one question would think was interesting to ask your listeners is how are people out there? How are people trying to come up with new ideas, and how are they? How can you frame this? Basically, how are the listeners? How are the listeners innovative in their daily work, and when and why, maybe? Yeah.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm happy to talk to you, and I will be more than happy to follow your journey, your project. So again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You learned something new and also got inspired by the guest. Don't forget to share the episode on your social media and recommend it to people you think they are really interested in this topic. Thank you so much again for giving your valuable time to Urbanistica podcast. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.